that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. Can you believe that's become my catchphrase? Or like my thing to say for these videos? I kind of just did that one time, and now I've been doing it for 2 years. Kind of crazy. Anyway, I have a couple of short stories for you, and then a novel by Zahn. Actually, it's all Zahn today. All of it's about Zahn. The greatest man who have ever lived. Anyway, starting with Judge's Call by Timothy Zahn. This is a short story where Mara is a little upset because Luke's been so busy with his academy, with helping stop political squabbles, having his responsibilities, that he hasn't had enough time for her. And it's like only 8 pages long. It's not a long short story. But basically, she agrees to go on a mission with him, just to spend some time with him, and it turns out to not really be that much of a mission. Or at least a mission that he could take his time on, because they go to a very nice place to basically have like a second honeymoon. Is it essential in your EU reading? Absolutely not. If you're a fan of Luke and Mara, it's a nice little sweet little thing that you can read before disaster in New Jedi Order. So, there you go. Then, at the back of the paperback of Survivor's Quest, which is the main novel we'll be reviewing today, you can read a short story called Fool's Bargain, also by Timothy Zahn. Now, there's a charity organization by the name of 501st, and they're big fans of Zahn, and so Zahn decided to include them in his story, because they're in the actual novel we'll be reviewing today in the short story, but the short stories they're kind of the focus, whereas the other stuff, they're just there. So, I don't have too much to say. It's the Imperial Hand. The 501st is part of the Imperial Hand, the secret sect that we learned about in Hand of Thrawn. And they're taking out warlords, or those that are still around, because obviously at this point Pelions made the peace, but there's still some sects of Imperial space where they just don't want to listen to Pelion. They're just still warlords, and so these 501st members are taking care of them, and it's fine. Hold on. Apologies. Living in a house does not provide always the best means of being able to do this stuff where there's other people in the house. Anyway, basically, the short story is fine. There's not much to it. They're just doing stuff, and I could give less of an F. But I read it because it's a part of the EU. I'm gonna read it, but it's not a bad story. It's not a good story. It just kind of exists, and you just kind of read it, and it's fine, and you move on with your life. And then we get on to the last thing, chronologically, that Timothy Zahn ever writes. Now, some of that's not his fault, because, well, Mara in the future. Stuff happens. Anyway, but we have Survivor's Quest by Timothy Zahn, which is kind of a prequel / epilogue to Outbound Flight. This was written before Outbound Flight. I don't have too much to say. There's a lot of promise that this book could have given, but it doesn't really. We get a little bit more about the Chiss, which is good. Basically, Mar and Luke happily married, everything's going well, there's peacetime. The Empire and the New Republic are now allies. They got that peace treaty. But that looming threat, there's something coming. The Vong. Of course, it's not really what Zahn intended, but that's what ended up happening. So we have this threat that's going to be coming someday. We don't know when, but it's coming, and you gotta be ready. But news of this outbound flight, which was a thing during the prequel era, has been discovered, and so Mara and Luke go on an adventure with the Chiss, and with this guy named Jinsler to go look at the remains of Outbound Flight. But Outbound Flight has not been this derelict ship. It has been this thriving community because of the events of the Outbound Flight novel. If you read it chronologically, which already happened all the way back after episode 1, then we know that the people on the ship survived, and they went on to just have families and stuff and continue living in that society on the ship. Crash landed because of the Jedi Jinsler that saved the ship. That's the thing, right? This was written before Outbound Flight. So part of the appeal, part of what would make this book interesting if you're reading publication-wise is going, oh, what happened on this ship? So many mysteries, so many threads. What's going on here? What is this? The book doesn't tell you, but it gets you intrigued, except that if you've been reading it in chronological order, then you already know the events of the story. You already know what happens. So this is just like a retread, and all the like, ooh, what happened? It's like, it's not, ooh, what happened? I already know. I read it. So it doesn't, maybe for Mara and Luke, but I'm not Mara and Luke. I already know. So it doesn't work the same. So this is an example of where reading it chronologically will be a detriment to your enjoyment, because it hinges on the mystery. Now, I heard somebody say before, well, then doesn't that apply to the prequels as well? But the OT only ever talks about the Clone Wars and everything in passing mention. Now, if the entire point of the original trilogy was to set up this mystery of the prequel era, then yes, knowing what happens later on would be a bit of a detriment. But that's not the thing, right? Like, the OT has almost nothing to do with the prequels outside of mentioning the Clone Wars and stuff. So that provides room for whatever. But this story kind of like hinges on the mystery. And as soon as you have that mystery answered, then the story kind of like fails. Also, just so many missed opportunities to kind of explore things that aren't explored. You really get no answers to the Outbound Flight, minus a couple things. Mara has this whole struggle in this book about like this new Empire of the Hand, like this is more the Empire I wanted, like the Empire stuff with none of the bad, which is interesting. But she's gonna stay with the New Republic by the end of the story, obviously. But it's an interesting thing where if certain events had occurred later on where Mara could have stuck around for some things, and she got to see Fell's Empire, perhaps she would have been down with that. Perhaps Mara would have approved. I could see her approving of such a thing. That was something I gleaned from that. I'm trying to tell you a lot about the story, but a lot of it is just like, I'm really sorry, it's summertime. There's like some things going on. But yeah, there's not a lot going on. There's a lot of like trying to figure out, because like somebody's sabotaging the ship, trying to kill Luke, and it's like, well, who's doing that? And like it's whole like mystery. Which the conclusion of that is, it's fine. What it's revealed to be is, if you've read Outbound Flight, it's like, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. But yeah, I mean, we get to see another Fell brother, in this, and that guy's cool. I think he's cool. I mean, we don't really see him beyond this book, but he was cool. The Chiss characters were fun. This thing was on. Zahn is a one-trick pony. He made a Thrawn trilogy, which is decent. Not nearly anywhere near the best of what the EU has to offer, but it's good. Some people would argue it's bad, which, okay. But it's okay. It's good to me. I think Outbound Flight is really good. And then everything else that Zahn has touched, I can't speak for New Canon because I don't read New Canon, but as for everything else in the EU, everything else he has touched has been whatever, whatever. And it's the same thing with this story. It's better than the Hand of Thrawn because it's only one novel and it's only like 360 pages. But it's just there's not much here. There's some hints and interesting things that are, like what else did I write? I didn't even write that many notes. Um, literally, I literally have no notes. It's okay. Or every note that I had, I've already mentioned. So, but there's something interesting at the end where I mentioned like how the Chiss had purposely planned this whole thing so that the bad guys that end up being the bad guys of the story can pop up and they can take them out or whatever. And it's a very Thrawn move. So Mara speculates, oh, is Thrawn still alive? And if so, he's probably on our side now. Which, of course, anybody who's read anything past the story knows that Thrawn never shows up again. We see some other things like of a cloning facility in the Jade and Core duology, but that's about it as far as Thrawn's influence. So, but again, Thrawn or Zahn leaves the impression that Thrawn is going to be a good guy moving forward if he did pop up again. So, and I don't know the Chiss aging parameters. Like, I don't know how that all works. Though theoretically, if they really wanted to, if the EU ever gets continued, you could take this line from Survivor's Quest and bring back Thrawn this time, post Crucible, as a good guy. That could be an interesting dynamic. I mean, I guess it's arguable whether he was ever actually a bad guy, but you could actually have him working alongside the Allies this time, which could be interesting. But I doubt that's going to happen. But it's something there that's kind of left at the end of the story. But for a story that focuses on Luke and Mara, it's not doesn't really focus on their relationship or their love or anything like that. They say I love you and stuff, but it's doesn't feel like that much. One of the things that might piss people off, but I rather liked about this book was the small little thing they did, which this was written after the prequels had come out, or at least after episode 1. I know that for sure. And so Mara and Luke fight some droidicas. The little rolling things from episode 1. They go, you know what I'm talking about. Those things. And I mean, the first one was like with some pirate gang, and it was a very beat up model. Like it was very old and rusty, and like like it took. And the guy even says like it took forever to get this thing running again. Like is it a little ham-fisted? Is it a little forced? Yeah, but it's kind of cool to see a prequel era thing included in OT. I like when that happens personally because I like the prequels and I like once you have the info, why wouldn't you include some small stuff like that? And then the second time they face one is on Outbound Flight, which is a prequel era vessel, so I don't mind that. That's okay with me. Or it might have not been. Was it? It was either that or Vagari's ship. I don't remember. Anyway, point being, both times I think it was acceptable. It is just a blatant way to throw like a prequel era thing into the OT era, but I thought it was okay because of the context, and I like when they bridge the gap like that, and I appreciate that. So I like that part of the story. Even though I'm not much of an action person, I still enjoyed seeing a prequel connection, and there'll be more of that moving forward, especially post New Jedi Order. Which other people get annoyed by, but I like it. I like seeing it because I like the prequels, and I like one of the things that was a big thing about the Black Fleet Crisis is that Luke doesn't, you know, he wants to know more about his mother. I mean, because who wouldn't? If he didn't get to have one, and then he just doesn't actually get to learn anything. And so, what's cool about like Dark Nest, for instance, is that through R2D2 he can actually explore some of that. And it's just some nice closure for him and Leia, and I think that's cool. I like that. Is it a blatant way just to shove some prequel stuff in there? Yeah, but like it also works for the character, so I like it. But yeah, so this wasn't as deep as that. It was just a droidica that they had to fight, but still, it was a cool connection. I liked it. And other than that, the story's okay. It doesn't really add to the future stories. Doesn't really detract from anything. It's just like another story before New Jedi Order, focused on Mara and Luke, and it's fine. It's not the greatest thing ever though. It can definitely be skipped, but it's okay. Up on Flight is a superior novel, though, if you actually want to know what goes on this ship than reading this. But of course, back when this was written, Up on Flight wasn't a thing yet. So, Um, I'm an anal guy for chronological order, but if you're gonna read this book, I would read this before Outbound Flight because it would actually get you interested in Outbound Flight. But if you read Outbound Flight first, then it's just not gonna do it for you. But that's basically it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Sharing helps a ton. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you when we start again one of the best young adult series I've ever read, Young Jay Knights. Until then, may the Force be with you.